Technical chit medley. The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Cayetano Alan, Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero Estrada, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
There are 12 senators who answered the roll call. For the record, Senator Pia S. Cayetano is in Switzerland. Senator Ferdinand R. Marcos is in Indonesia. Senator Antonio V. Trillanes is in the United States. Therefore, is in the United States. In addition, this representation, the chair was informed by Senator Alan Cayetano that he will be in Singapore today, although the records do not indicate that. Moreover, three of our colleagues are under detention and cannot come to the session hall. Therefore, 12 constitutes a quorum. That is the ruling of the chair. The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 79th Session, May 27, 2015, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the reading of the Journal of Wednesday, May 27, Session number 79, is dispensed with, and the same is hereby approved.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider on third reading House Bill number 4769 under Committee Report number 125. This is the bill on General Trias City Charter, Mr. President.
Consideration of the measure is in order.
With the consent of the body, may we request the Secretary to read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and Record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 4769, an act converting the municipality of General Trias in the province of Cavite into a component city to be known as the City of General Trias.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, copies of this measure, as approved on second reading, have been distributed to the members of the Senate last May 27, 2015, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under Section 26, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the 1987 Constitution. We are thus ready to approve the measure on third reading. I ask for a roll call vote.
With the permission of the Chamber, we suspend for 1 minute to allow all our colleagues to be in the hall.
Nga pala, dami na sa loob. Ilan na?
12. Huh? Ayan. Session is resumed. The Secretary,
Roll call vote, Mr. President.
before we conduct the roll call
Before
vote, the
the vote,
minority
Mr.
leader wishes to be recognized. And
Before
is
the
so
vote, Mr.
recognized.
President, just to clarify, I understand your manifestation earlier that for the quorum, the senators abroad can be considered as unofficial leave, and therefore we may be able to constitute a quorum with their number. But may I ask, as far as the count of a vote on a third reading is concerned, Mr. President, will that suffice, or we will have to have a majority or a quorum for the approval?
Can the chair ask for with the permission of the chamber, 1 minute suspension?
Simple majority, unless except if it's a tax. Unless the Constitution specifies it.
Session is resumed. On the basis of our practice and legislative history, the third reading can be conducted as long as there is a quorum, and the approval of the majority of the quorum is sufficient to pass the measure on third reading.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Please proceed with the roll call vote.
Roll call vote on House Bill number 4769. The Honorable Senator Sangara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, Alan Peter Compañero S, Cayetano Pia S, Defense Garda, Marcos Usmeña, Pimentel, Ro, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Drilon.
12 affirmative votes, no negative vote, no abstention. House Bill 4769 is hereby approved on third reading. Please, may we request the audience to refrain from clapping. Majority Leader.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider on third reading House Bill number 4400 under Committee Report number 153. This is the bill on the President Corazon C. Aquino Avenue, Mr. President.
Any objection in non-consideration of the measure is in order.
With the consent of the body, may we request the Secretary to read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 4400, an act naming as the President Corazon C. Aquino Avenue, the circumferential road which commences at the junction of the Iloilo-Dumangas Coastal Road in Balabago, Haro District, Iloilo City, then follows a general westward direction along the floodways south bank towards Buhang, Haro, Takas, Haro, and Ungka to Pavia, then traverses southwards to the Mandurriao District, Iloilo Antique Road, near the center of Arevalo District, Iloilo City.
Mr. To the members of the Senate last May 2015, thereby complying with the 3-day, we are thus a measure. I ask for a roll call.
Ejercito Enrile Escudero Estrada Lapi Estrada
8. Report number 4. This is the bill on Senator Benigno S. Aquino, Mr. President.
Capis Road, Old Route, which begins at the junction of General Luna to the airport access road and ends at the gate of the Iloilo International Airport, traversing the municipalities of Pavia, Santa Barbara, and Cabatuan and Iloilo City as Senator Benigno S. Aquino Jr. Avenue.
Mr. President, copies of this 15, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under Section 26.
Tano PIS, Defensor Santiago, Ejercito Enrile Escudero, Gingona, Unasan, Lapid, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel.
Senate, I move to consider on third reading House Bill number 1042 under Committee Report number 5. Senate, I move to consider on third reading number 1042 under Committee Report number. Copies moved on second reading to the last May 28, 2015, thereby complying with the
12 affirmative, 0 negative votes, no abstention. Senate Bill 1042 is
suspension.
suspended.
Can I ask for a minute suspension, Mr. President?
1 minute suspension.
ready to bring into the Senate.
The Secretary will do so.
House 6, an act reappoint
Bill number 3750 is approved on third.
Of the bill without prejudice.
Secretary will read the title of the bill.
House Bill number 4537, an act
To inserting into the Senate Journal and Record the whole text.
Secretary will read the title of the bill.
4537,
Members of the Senate.
Binay Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero, Gerda Marco Quino, Binay Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero, S. Sito, and really Rada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Lex, creating the Department of Information, defining its functions, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
The members of the Senate last May 28, 2015, thereby complying with the three. We are thus ready to approve.
Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Honorable Hunasan, Lapid, Ligarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trillanes.
Votes, no negative votes, no abstention. Senate Bill 2686 is hereby approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will read the reference of business.
282, an act promoting fair competition to protect consumer welfare, advance domestic and interactions of House Bill 603, an act promoting leadership and financial literacy program among the Filipino youth by instituting mechanisms on the disagreeing high school system in the Philippines and recognition
Rules.
the province of Pampanga as the William Golangco
Public Works.
5750, an act declaring the stretch of beaches that appropriating funds therefore.
Tourism Finance.
5752, an act redefining the term by Republic Act number 9994, otherwise known as the Expanded Senior Citizens Act of 2010.
Social Justice, Welfare, Rural Development.
5755, an act authorizing the merger of the Development Bank of the Philippines and the Liability.
Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions.
Number 32, 2015.
Finance.
House Joint Resolution number 33, Joint Resolution enjoining the celebration of the life and works of National Artist for Literature, N.V.M. Gonzalez, declaring September 8, 2015 to September.
Committee on Education and Culture.
Bill first reading, Senate Bill number 27, establishing the Philippine Base as Act, BP bilang 29, otherwise known as the Organization Act of 1980 is amended, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments. Sponsors and amended, and therefore recommending its approval with amendments. Sponsor Senator.
The staff and community chairperson Corazon. Good afternoon, Mr. President. And of course, with the consent of the team, the Supreme encapsulated the foregoing principle in the case of United States versus Iturius. It was expressed that the right to participate directly in the form of government by 5 of the 9th Electorate as manifested in the counting and eventually in the canvassing of the vote. Thus, Section 5 Constitution are excluded from insers and members 12 from the polling place. Constitution squarely placed the solemn duty of is deputized in the transport. Such role shall be limited to providing personnel tasked to transport these ballots and the integrity of the
Senator Pimentel.
So, Mr. President, give our colleagues the time to the measure. Interpellation in the I move that we 886. I thus interpellations.
Period of interpellation is in order.
I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator. Mr. President.
Senator Gingo.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The sponsor, Senator. Mr. President.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
15th Congress was vetoed by the President, if I recall correctly.
Yes, Mr. President.
And for the record, Mr. Sponsor, can we state the grounds for the veto of the President in a letter dated May 24, 2013, addressed to the Senate President?
Yes, Mr. President. The first ground that the President stated in his veto message.
Maybe we can read the whole message if that is long.
There are just 4 points. And what I plan to do, with your permission, Mr.
Yes,
President,
please.
is read the point of the objection, and then read the.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. States that the bill's provision on damages in displacements caused by security agents of the state, where it's this is in section 16 of the old law, or of the old bill rather, where it's or reintegrate and other law enforcement aid, they shall provide the persons is we have states or the intended to give, as it was conceived as an and recommendatory agency exercising powers intended to give, as it was conceived as an investigative and recommendatory agency exercising limited and the power to determine damages. Sufficient enforcement agencies cause damage to IDPs. Enforcement agencies cause damage to IDPs. Resistance, a court of jurisdiction shall damages inflicted
Against the ID and direct the persons responsible inflicted against the ID and the persons responsible, which is the role of the CHR, power, competent jurisdiction, the jurisdiction to determine damages. And on the other hand, Section 21 on the CHR gives the power to the CHR to render financial assistance at its sole discretion.
Well, Mr. President, the award in the phrase what is called repatriation guidelines.
Can I have a copy of the bill?
Because such HR shall be designated as the institutional focal point of the DP. As such, the CHR shall have the following additional functions: letter E, sole discretion at its discretion, and the necessary guidelines to implement the same. This language is broad enough to cover all kinds of financial assistance, and the damages can be in the form of a financial assistance. Would the sponsor have a strong objection if, in the period of amendments, line 22 and 23 on page 14, the question is that binding on the court?
No, Mr. President. I think it should be read in conjunction with Section 19, which is entitled Financial Assistance to IDPs. Where is Section 19 here? Can somebody point out Section 19?
What is that? Yeah, Section 19 is clear, financial assistance. But do we have that's done by the CHR? Do we have to repeat that here?
Oh, well, it's just a matter of style, Mr. President. I don't see any reason.
If there is no,
Yeah.
yes, just to avoid confusion,
Okay,
at the
Mr.
appropriate period, maybe we can delete paragraph. If there is confusion, at the appropriate period, maybe we can delete paragraph E of section 61, found on lines 21, found on lines 22 and 23 of page 14.
I have no objection to that, Mr. President. I have no objection to that. I have no.
Further, on the lines 11 and 12, which is paragraph B of section 21. Lines 11 and 12, which is paragraph B of section 21. Again, the powers are letter B.
That will not be binding on the court. The purpose for this provision is because it has been observed that in the experience EPs is that experience IDPs is that HR has to on the provision on
HR rules need valid. Would the court be able to rule otherwise?
yes, the court could be able to rule otherwise, Mr. President.
In other words, you're saying that. And so, what is the guideline for?
Well, the guidelines are the CA. Well, the guidelines are for the CA to establish a procedure, so that at the instance they can separate those that are legitimate from those who just want to take advantage of the system.
And those found to be illegitimate, deprived of the services of, or would be deprived, would that be, I'm sorry, would be, for example, not be allowed to claim financial assistance?
Yes, most definitely, Mr. President. This situation, Mr. President, just to explain, is akin to some squatting syndicates.
Sorry?
Squatting syndicates.
Squatting syndicates.
Akin, Mr.
As in,
President.
If you're saying this is still busy and defines a prison term and arbitrary of the proposed measure, and the specific act is arbitrary internal reading of the proposed measure, Mr.
Yes.
Now,
Similar practices aimed at resolution of the affected population by compelling and public interest without the proper implementation of return, local integration, or resettlement elsewhere of affected IDPs. Letter D. Cases of natural human injury granted in cases where regulations of the rights granted under Section 9, paragraph A, C, D.
is it open-end include? It doesn't seem to indicate.
What's the question?
I am wrong. The impression of the chair is that the phrase shall include, because the enumeration is only the inclusion of these acts without and opening the door. To respect, the chair has problems. The enumerated criminal or of my superior as a defense, would that expose the to
The negative, Mr. President.
the state? I must with civil liability. I assert as a defense. I am an agent. I am being sued for civil liability.
To the court, because if the of a superior would be of human rights or violative of law, then certainly that is an excuse. So we'll leave it up to the appreciation by the court, Mr. President.
Of the
To some questions.
Yes, most certainly, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are items in my interpellations that was already taken up by the Senate President, but before
Here, like the access to food, shelter. So we have an enumeration here, like the right thing, the necessary.
Yun. I was going to ask for facts on the state of the IDPs in the country, Mr. President, if you don't mind. May we have the figures? Currently, IDPs in the Philippines.
Use the speech. This one? Okay. I just wanted to verify the data. For 2008, we have 2.8 million IDPs. 2009, 2 million. 2010, 1 million. President.
Almost 10% of the population in the country was displaced. No?
I am
7.2.
told because of you.
Two.
I am Yolanda, Zamboanga.
Yeah, that is my next question. What are the reasons for the 2.2 million? That is my next question. What are the reasons for the displacements of the internally displaced persons? Anong cause nyon, Mr. President?
Most of it daw, I'm told, Mr. President, is due to Typhoon Pablo.
7.2.
Yes, but principally
Uh,
the reason for the veto was the granting of judicial power, which I personally also agree.
Philippines said unlawfully differentiates between the placements caused by security agents of the state and other entities. You deleted this. This is no longer found in the you are sponsored now.
Right now, what happens is a personal life, not the government.
So, therefore,
Yeah,
you
principle in law
All right.
that the state cannot be sued without its consent.
so this is no longer found.
Yes, Mr. President.
Ang internally displaced person, di pwedeng tawagin refugee.
Like I said,
It's not found. Will you explain? But you were coercive acts, something to that effect. Can you?
that's why, Mr. President, we that the enumeration would be exclusive, so as to avoid very, very.
That it is not yet clear in my mind. What I'm just saying is, if we can in the bill arbitrary, that's all that we're saying, Mr. Sponsor.
Okay, Mr. President. Well,
So, do I take it that in the period of amendments we will be defining this?
yes, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Does the bill extend to foreign humanitarian groups with regards to their access to damaged areas, easing restrictions in the entry of their relief goods? Yung mga tumutulong po sa mga internally displaced persons.
Third paragraph, the importation equipment for relief to internally displaced persons are hereby authorized in accordance with Section 105 of the tariff and cost intended for, which would have been due and payable at the time of entry if the article had been entered without the benefit of this section. Subject to forfeiture and importation and shall constitute a fraudulent practice.
They're having difficulty bringing in hindi magandang enumerate na natin dito kung anong klaseng assistance ang ibibigay natin sa ating mga
Sandali ha. Baka nga iba
kaya
yung
hindi
mga
ako makasagot. To this foreign through this basis them. But spring, whatever manggagaling yan.
Yes, there is a provision there, but the financial, to clarify, Mr. President, is for the resettlement of the.
The chair has a few more questions. If the
Yes,
there is the bill would punish by an imprisonment anywhere from 12 years and 1 day to 6 years, which is an afflictive penalty, quite heavy. 12 years because that's reclusion temporal in its minimum period. But maybe for the record, what is the penalty? Because that's reclusion temporal in its minimum period. But maybe for the record, what is the penalty? Ready to resume. Recess 12 years and 1 day too.
minimum, it's 14. In its minimum, it's 14. 14 years and 8 President.
14, right. Then, arbitrary is the accused to any way to 14 years and 8 months, for the record.
Yes, Mr. President.
Arbitrary to anywhere from 12 Monday to 14 years and 8 months, for the record.
Yes, Mr. President.
Now, now, the arbitrary internal displacement as a crime refers to acts of displacement or any other coercive acts committed by any person or groups of persons directed against the civilian population. What is a civilian population in terms of number?
The distinguish, so
Displacement of
ordinary usage sense.
is the two individual record, because when the prosecutor now prosecutes somebody for violation of this law and charges with about that that element, because about that precedence and the arbitrary internal displacement as defined in this special law.
Mr. President, you know, well, first of all, I see your point, Mr. President. We can make the language clearer by making the necessary amendments by stating that one person or a person can be an arbitrary
Because,
person.
Mr. Sponsor, we must be precise as the criminal offense, which involves deprivation of. That's why I'm begging the sponsor, so that we would not have problems when this crime. Again, an element of arbitrary internal displacement says that, specifies a group of persons directed against the civilian population which are contrary to law, good morals, order, or public policy. If I were the prosecutor, I would have a hard time defining what is contrary to law, good morals, public order, and public policy. If I recall my revised penal code correctly, Mr. Sponsor, and correct me if I'm wrong, we do not use the phrase good morals, public policy when we define a criminal offense, subject the accused to imprisonment. It's usually to measure liability. But since arbitrary internal displacement is a criminal offense, I will be at a loss, and you have to guide me if I were the prosecutor, how do I element that this is contrary to law, good morals, public order, and public policy? What law?
Yes, Mr. President, but please note that there is conjunctive and characterize the last sentence, line 3, and defined in section 6 of this act. 6 of this act.
So therefore, it is not an act punished, but
President.
well, to define what are distinguished from the crime of coercion under the revised penal code, because here, Mr. Sponsor, since this is special law, he can be prosecuted under this law and under the revised penal code. So you may end up punishing the accused here for a longer period than simply 14 years and 8 months, because of one is punished under the special law, and the other is punished under the special law, under the revised penal code. I'm just suggesting that to the chair.
Yes, Mr. President. In fact, earlier we agreed that we will have to make the enumeration exclusive of the acts,
Yes.
exclusive, and now we will make it clearer.
The act
define.
itself.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Now.
Mr. President.
On page 12, line 14, 13 and 14, you punish by a penalty of prisión mayor in the minimum period one who attempts to commit the offense of arbitrary internal displacement. What is an attempted arbitrary internal displacement?
Bakit may attempted? Bakit may attempted? One minute suspension, Mr.
1 minute
President.
suspension. Which I'm not prepared to discuss right now. Go back to the Walang attempt, hindi ba? Session is resumed.
Mr. President, upon consultation of upon further consultation, we are amenable to its having the provision that states that there is an attempted stage be deleted from the bill.
May we also ask the sponsor to take a good look at the liability will be deemed arbitral display, an action which will be deemed as arbitrary displacement. A common sponsor, we say the remove formal settlers in a company property. The board of directors to criminalize
informal settlers.
not this,
It is informal settlers,
not this law.
not these laws.
So when would, sir?
Yes, Mr. President,
Yes.
because one of the instances that are penalized. Yes, Mr. President,
Yes.
because one of the instances that are
Of this law on instances in
it's different. It's not in that. That is not arbitrary. That is not arbitrary. In fact,
you can force them.
inundated will be underwater. They definitely have to move. And if you provide,
Sir, I think on the questions that we have raised would deserve a second look at this, and maybe we can continue the questions later on to allow us another pass at this measure.
Yes, Mr. President, and I would like to express my sincere appreciation, my high appreciation of the comments and notes of the Senate President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2785 under Committee Report number 149.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is suspended.
At this point, Mr. President, I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 21 under Committee Report number 69 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 21 under Committee Report number 69.
So, in order.
With the permission of the body, I move that the Secretary read only the title of the measure. The title of the measure, Mr. President.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 21 under Committee Report number 69, an act instituting the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers.
I move that we...
Senator Angara is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader, distinguished colleagues. I rise to sponsor the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, Committee Report 69 based on Senate Bills 21, 673, 1861, and 1986. Araw-araw higit sa 1.4 seafarer o mandaragat ang nasa halos 100,000 barko sa iba't ibang karagatan ng mundo. Sila ang nagpapatakbo ng mga merchant vessels at bulk cars. Buhat ng kanilang pagsisikap at pagpupursigi, dumadating sa bansa ang mga pang-araw-araw na produkto at kasangkapan. At any given moment, Mr. President, some 20 million containers are crossing the world, all of them having spent some time on a ship. One author once described the shipping industry as responsible for 90% of everything. And for that, we have to thank the global fleet of sailors that runs the industry. At karamihan po dito sa World Maritime Fleet ay Pilipino. May isang tala na malapit sa 25% o 400,000 ng lahat ng mandaragat ngayon ay from the Philippine Islands. Kung kaya't minsan, noong 2010, sinabi ni Mr. Ephthemios Mitropoulos, Secretary General ng International Maritime Organization or IMO, na ang Filipino seafarers raw ay mga unsung heroes of an unsung industry. Madaling isipin kung bakit. Masdan lang natin ang heograpiya natin, isang kapuluan na taglay ang isa sa pinakamahabang baybay dagat o coastline sa mundo. Kung kaya't sa kasaysayan natin, makikita kung papaano ang Pilipinas ay sa dagat, maging ang dagat ay sa Pilipinas. Mababatid ang malapit nating relasyon sa tubig at karagatan at sa paglalayag. Filipinos have a very rich seafaring tradition that has been passed down from generation to generation. Our ancestors already had their maritime know-how to fish and dive for maritime riches. Hence, Filipino seafarers were more than equipped for seafaring by the time the Spanish arrived and jump-started the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade. On those galleons, Filipinos outnumbered their Iberian counterparts 5-1, powering such global trade from the 16th to the 19th century. Comprising a veritable precursor to modern-day globalization, such galleon trade is one of the most important phenomena in our global history, and Filipino seafarers undoubtedly had a major role. The rush to seafaring began in the Philippines in 1974 with the encouragement from President Ferdinand Marcos. By now, there are 90 maritime academies producing thousands and thousands of seafarers in a year. Hence, even today, Filipinos contribute to the world by way of the sea. Sinasabi na madalas piliin ng mga foreign ship owners sa mga Pilipino dahil sila'y magaling sa Ingles, disiplinado, matyaga, tapat, maparaan, masunurin, at higit sa lahat, masiyahin. Ang Pilipinas rin kasi ang ikalima o fifth sa mundo sa larangan ng mundo, napakatulong bigay ng mga seafarers sa bansa. Ayon sa datas ng OEA, mula 2006 hanggang 2012, nakakarating man ang mga seafarers sa iba't mas madalas sa kanila ang lifestyle-related diseases. Sipon, buhat ng mabibel, minsan karagatan. Pero sa society must intervene at some point. Nakasaad kung kailan ang bayaran ng na may malinaw na nakasaad kung kailan ang bayaran ng sweldo 9,000 Filipino seafarers sa ang isang Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers ng mga Carta of Filipino Seafarers, educational advancement and training at reasonable and affordable costs. 5. Relevant information, consultation against discrimination and legal representation. Work 2. Self-organization. 3. To engage in collective bargaining. Sa isang banda, lalong magkakangipin na ito ang mga regulasyon ng POEA at DOLE hinggang bansa. The terms and conditions of employment, including number of work and rest hours, wages, and paid annual leave and termination of employment. We further assure the stability of conditions of employment, including number of work and rest hours, wages, and paid annual leave and termination of employment. We further assure dako naman na MLC 2006. Magkakaroon na ng standard certificate ang mga Philippine registered ships. Mr. President, this is encapsulated in select provisions throughout the foregoing measure, such as Section 22, stating that normal hours of work shall be 8 hours, not exceeding 14 in one day, and the minimum to be calculated on the basis of a minimum of 2.5 calendar days per month of employment, and Section 24, which mandates that seafarers be entitled to repatriation at no cost, including transportation, food, accommodation, and transport of personal effects, unless the cause of termination of employment is due to the fault of the seafarer. The measure also requires Philippine registered ships to give entitlements to seafarers such as safe, decent, and adequate accommodations, sanitation facilities including separate quarters for males and females, recreational facilities except for coastal ships, free food and drinking water service taking into consideration differing cultural and religious backgrounds, and prepared according to the Sanitation Code of the Philippines. It also protects the seafarers by making the ship owners responsible for its employees' health program, medical care and treatment, and compensation in case of death or long-term disability. Seafarers are covered for social welfare benefits by mandatory social welfare programs under PhilHealth, SSS, Pag-ibig, among others. The measure mandates that ship owners of all Philippine registered ships shall ensure its ships' compliance. Otherwise, they are liable for violation under this Act, and to develop and implement onboard and onshore complaint procedures for the settlement of disputes. Aral na naayon sa kanilang profesyon. Binubuo rin ng batas ang Philippine Seafarer One-Stop Processing Center na ang mandato ay maging Integrated Document Processing Center for the seafarers and the Seafarer One-Stop Processing Center na ang mandato ay maging Integrated Document Processing Center for the seafarers and the general public to conduct.
Senate Bill number 21 under Committee Report number 69.
Any objection? Hearing none, so suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, June 2, 2015.
Session is adjourned until Tuesday, June 2, 2015 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.